Welcome to Stockton Alive with your host, Nate Knott. Take it away, Nate.
Well, good evening, Mr. Dustin.
Good evening, sir.
And tonight, the live broadcast is on Monday night, August 14th, because we'll probably mention a few dates and times. So we want you to know that we're live on August 14th, in case you're watching this possibly as a replay on August 21st. Yeah. Having said all that, you remember a couple weeks ago, maybe it was the last show, when we talked about how everyone always says, we're got a really good show tonight. And
yes.
We got so much. And I came here and told you, actually, Dustin, we have absolutely nothing.
And we didn't have nothing.
We had nothing. But
we just talked about broadcasting.
Yeah. And Bill King and baseball. And then we actually got on topic with Buildings of Stockton, which we still never really finished.
Nope. That's
still a whole other show for another day.
Maybe a long format show one day.
Today I've got too much. I've got all these things sitting here.
You look like one of those NFL coaches getting ready for the season.
That's right. Yeah, I've been up for 42 straight hours watching game film and trying to plot a game plan.
John Gruden up at 4:30 a.m. every morning.
The little X's and O's on the laminated sheet that they all carry now.
Speaking of legendary coaches, one passed away today, the former Arkansas head coach and athletic director Frank Broyles.
I did not know that.
Yeah, 92 years old.
Wow, I didn't know he was that old, although it makes sense because I think he was in his heyday in the early 70s and late 60s.
Yeah, Arkansas, a powerhouse back then. I believe Jimmy Johnson was one of his players, so was Jerry Jones.
In fact, they lost one of their most monumental games was a game that they lost at home to, I want to say it was University of Texas.
Wow.
About 1969, where they were, I think both teams were undefeated, or maybe Texas had one loss. I think they're both undefeated. It was at Arkansas. They led the entire game. It's what, like it typically happens. There was some critical play with about 4 or 5 minutes ago. They're driving to either kick a field goal, go up by 10, or go up by 14, and there's a penalty and a fumble or something, or a tip ball for an interception. Texas drives down and ties it up, I think, with like maybe a minute to go. Now, this is before sudden death overtime. I'm sorry, I don't have sudden death overtime in college football. Before they had the programmed overtime.
And he was a broadcaster, too.
That's right. Oh, yeah, I was going to get to that.
Okay, sorry, my bad.
Yeah, but that's all right. That's all right. But anyway, eventually I think Texas decided to go for 2. They were down by 1 after they scored went for 2 and 1 or something. I don't know. It was one of those classic ESPN games some time ago I was watching. Well, anyway, getting back to
the show.
The show. We always take liberties. I mean, this is Stockton Alive, and if you're going to be alive, then of course you're going to do things from time to time in the way that you choose to do them to be spontaneous. Because if you weren't spontaneous, you might as well be tape recorded, or in this day and age, digitally imprinted, or whatever the computer does. What we talked about this briefly between shows, and you saw the construction going on Pacific Avenue. And as part of that construction, they are, of course, relocating and temporarily closing and reopening RTD bus stops. And so you thought that the construction on Pacific Avenue was RTD projects. Actually not. That is simply the city of Stockton doing a much-needed both preventive and improving, smoothing out paving of, I don't know if there is such a word, actually. Paving is what I'm trying to say, of Pacific Avenue. And, of course, we run our Route 40 Metro Express up there, which until very recently ran trips every 10 minutes in both directions on weekdays. Now it's every 15 minutes. We're still at 121 trips a day or something like that on weekdays versus what was 146. So all that activity led you to believe that RTD was doing some construction. And that's not true. However, we are about to embark on major construction on Martin Luther King Boulevard. So, based on the fact that you requested this information, we're just going to go all RT for the most part until we stumble onto a baseball announcer or some incredible hockey moment or something stumbles into this broadcast. We are actually going to do all RTD today, which I'm not going to do too often because I don't think that's generally a really wildly exciting subject to a lot of people. However, and this is not the transportation show we keep talking about. I have a whole theme show for transportation in which we would talk about airlines, steamships, cruise ships, Amtrak, Greyhound, Trailways, which companies people don't even know about, and maybe trucks and cars a little bit, and interstate freeways and airports and river locks. But this is not that show. This is simply RTD, which stands for San Joaquin Regional Transportation District. A lot of people say Rapid Transit District. It's not Rapid Transit. That was a term made infamous, by the way, by Southern California. after they tore out the big red cars, the electric cars, and the Los Angeles Street Railway with its yellow streetcars, which were narrow gauge, by the way, and they put in freeways, and then they created the publicly owned and operated Southern California Regional Rapid Transit District, which also was once known as RTD. Now it's mostly known as MTA down there. There was nothing rapid about their service. Their buses were stuck in congested street traffic. They were stuck in congested. Their so-called freeway flyers were roaring down the freeway at 15, 20, 25 miles an hour on a good day. On a bad day, they were crawling along at 5, 10 miles an hour. And when they first came out of that service, they weren't air conditioned either. So you're sitting on a diesel transit bus with windows that still opening the windows so a little trickle of air would come in along with all the automobile and bus exhaust. That must have been, and that's what replaced really good, rapid, fast, efficient rail service in Southern California, which was famous for its big red cars primarily, although again, in the city of Los Angeles had yellow streetcars on a separate system known as the Los Angeles Railway. That was all merged into several different organizations, one of which was LAMPTA, Los Angeles Area Municipal Transit Association, or something like that.
Sounds like a fraternity.
Yes, which eventually evolved, and after they got rid of all the rail and everything, and predictably put in diesel buses, predictably built by General Motors with Standard Oil and Firestone tire, the same conspiracy that tore up rail everywhere. Which, by the way, was a conspiracy, was real because they were convicted in a court of law for that. It's not a conspiracy theory. They were convicted in law for conspiring to monopolize and ruin public transportation. That lawsuit, that conviction was in 1948, by the way. That's before the Pacific Electric was even totally ruined. They were already convicted. But anyway, predictably, they put the buses out there. And then, of course, as I said, you had the freeway snarl traffic and everything, and the so-called freeway flyers, cruise along 15, 20 miles an hour. I should tell you, I almost suffocated in the middle of the Golden State Freeway one time.
What?
Yes, this is a true story, mind you.
Okay.
It comes right out of what I was just talking about, and then we'll contrast this dismal thing I'm talking about with what RTD's doing here, literally, because we're going to talk about electricity and fresh air.
I saw that.
But right now, my story about how I almost suffocated on the Golden State Freeway. I'm coming home. After I met this young lady on an Amtrak train, no less. I'm visiting her months later in Southern California, and I went there for Thanksgiving weekend 1975. And I'm coming home at about 4:30 in the afternoon or maybe more like 3:30 in the afternoon on the Golden State Freeway. This happened just a little bit past where the Elysian Hill, where Dodger Stadium is.
Chavez Ravine.
Yes, Chavez Ravine, that's right. I'm driving my 1964 Rambler American hardtop, which had no air conditioning.
Which music was on the radio?
Oh, disco, of course. Like Fly Robin Fly, The Hustle, Captain and Tennille.
I can just imagine you.
Yeah, so there I am, and as usual, the Angeles National Forest is on fire. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, never. That is never on the fire in the summertime.
Yeah,
it's never on
I'm
fire.
actually always surprised when it's not on fire.
I know.
This particular day, it was a hot, muggy Los Angeles afternoon. It was the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh.
Which means it was technically winter.
Yeah.
But this particular day, it must have been about 82 degrees with about 90% humidity.
Perfect SoCal weather.
And the Angeles National Forest was on fire. And it wasn't just on fire. It was spewing out this ridiculously yucky, ugly, toxic-looking, poisonous kind of orange, purple smoke.
I've been down there when fires are happening.
God, the sight alone almost made me sick.
It's sticky.
But this freeway, of course, predictably came to almost a total stop, and I'm in the middle lane, and I'm bumper to bumper. I can't merge the right, I can't merge the left. We're going 5 miles an hour. I noticed after about 10 minutes of this, and I got my windows down because I'm trying not to be a broiled chicken, and I noticed all of a sudden I'm breathing a little faster, and I'm starting to sweat a little bit. I literally was starting to have carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh no!
And I was starting to hyperventilate. And then of course when that happens, you start to panic. And I'm thinking, I can't pull over, I can't speed up, I can't stop, I can't get out of the car. And all those thoughts are running through my mind, and I'm breathing faster and faster. I can actually feel my heartbeat going boom, 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 boom. And then a miracle happened. We speeded up to 12 miles an hour, and a puff. That's what it was. A puff of fresh air somehow found the driver's side window of my 1964 Rambler American hardtop. bright red with a white top, by the way, and red vinyl seats. You'd love sitting down those red vinyl seats if they'd been sunbaked for a couple hours. It was a good car, by the way. I liked the car. I'm not making fun of the car, but anyway, that revived me, Dustin. 12 miles an hour and a puff of fresh air, followed by another intermittent puff of fresh air, like 10 seconds later, put just enough regular, everyday, normal, sort of like regular oxygen air, oxygenated air into my lungs to where my then 18-year-old body revived enough. And then about 10 minutes later, we got kind of past the major traffic jam. I think that was basically all the merging where the Golden State, the San Diego, the Long Beach, the Pasadena, and the Harbor Freeway all like come together, or used to. That area now has like triple the freeways it did then, and they all fly over each other. I don't think the traffic's any faster, but it's triple the size of the intersection now. But then I got into the Altamont, you know, and was able to roar uphill 45, 50 miles an hour, and I was fine. Then I made it home safely like 7 hours later. So anyway, now let's contrast that pathetic, miserable scene with the modern-day RTD right here in Stockton, California, on Stockton Alive, exclamation mark. We are engaging in a major attempt to provide people with cutting-edge, state-of-the-art, modern-day public transportation. Now, that still in and of itself is not going to excite a lot of people. But before I get into that, let's look at the innovations we have had in recent years. 2007, January 21st to be exact, 2007, RTD did start its Route 40 Metro Express route on the Pacific Corridor. This type of service, which we've talked about a little bit, is called Bus Rapid Transit, BRT. And what Bus Rapid Transit is a new, and it's not so new now, but it was then, and we were one of the innovators in the whole United States of it, especially in California. Bus Rapid Transit is where you take a fairly heavy transit route where you have pretty good ridership, and you take out about 2/3 of the stops. The stops that are left, you really improve. You put in beautiful shelters and maybe some art. And in our case, not everybody, but in our case, you put in what's called fare vending machines, and you do all the business of collecting fares at the machine rather than on the bus at a fare box. And you paint the bus an extra nice paint scheme or something distinctive. And in our case, the buses had larger windows and wider doors, which enabled boarding to be faster and easier and more spacious. And the driver had a bigger windshield, and there was better AV systems inside to disseminate information. Now I'm talking about 2007. Most of what those buses have now is pretty common throughout the industry, but that's because it's 10 years later. So we put that route out there. It replaced 4 slow lumbering routes with traditional buses. And the 4 routes together, I'm trying to remember the numbers now, used to do something like, I want to say it was 1,100 trips a day on 4 routes using about 90-something hours of service. The Metro Express from day one was doing 1,500 trips at about 70 hours with one route, operating the buses every 15 minutes. At the height of that route, a couple years ago, it was doing, on a good day, over 5,000 trips a day. Now it's doing about 4,450 a day, which means it's still a heavyweight route. And have to take a pause here for a moment, liquefy my vocal cords. But anyway, so that's the route we innovated. And we not only innovated it just by putting that service out there, we did it with diesel-electric hybrid buses. Now, to be building up to what we're going to trumpet here in a little bit. I said trumpet, by the way, as in the musical instrument. At that time, diesel-electric hybrid buses themselves were relatively rare and innovative. In fact, it was our little transit district, the San Joaquin Regional Transit District, RTD, that actually pioneered the entire diesel-electric bus hybrid technology for the whole United States of America. Now, people can say, you're exaggerating. Other people had hybrid buses in other parts of the country. A few did, sort of, yes. But here's why we were significant. This is go back to 2003 now, and people were and hybrid cars were just coming out with Honda first and then Toyota. The first hybrid car manufactured for mass sale, by the way, was the Honda Insight. Do you remember that? Little 2-door sports car with kind of these
I remember that.
Swept wing sides and skirts over the rear wheels. They didn't really sell very well, but they were an interesting little car. But Toyota came out with the Prius about a year later and kind of knocked the pants off of it. And And then Honda responded with the Honda Civic, which was basically a standard Honda Civic with a hybrid drivetrain, whereas the Prius was a whole new technological car from scratch. Anyway, so this is new technology for cars, and here we are doing it with a bus. Now, this is why I say we're the ones that really pioneered it for the whole United States, and I'm not exaggerating. Our bus, and it's still being used right now, it's close to retirement, and I keep telling them to put it in a museum or something, but our bus, number 4001, what we call the sunflower bus. If you look around, occasionally see a bus coming down the street. There's mostly a light blue color with sunflowers painted all over the side. That the light blue color is representing the sky, by the way, and fresh air. Was taken by the California Air Resources Board and literally tortured for almost 2 years, 2004 and 2003 into 2004, a little bit into 2005. They drove it, tested it, and measured the tailpipe emissions and did all these crazy things. And they finally admitted that a diesel-electric hybrid bus had approximately the same or less emissions than a CNG bus, compressed natural gas. And they really wanted the compressed natural gas to be kind of they kind of preferred it to be the chosen, which it generally has been, the chosen use for alternative fuel and low emissions buses, because you have the huge Southern California gas lobby, and among other things. But our bus, which was built by Gillig Brothers of Hayward, California, which has just recently relocated to a huge new plant in Livermore, California, still a local family-owned type business, privately owned business, here in Northern California. Our Gillig Brothers, along with the then giant General Motors Corporation, not quite the same one that's now left after the government financing and bailout of sorts. The still large, big, monolithic General Motors Corporation, with their wholly owned subsidiary Allison Transmission, put that bus together with Gillig, and it passed the California Air Resources Board and was certified as a bus that could be manufactured for transit use in California. So why is that significant? For all the fun everyone makes of California throughout the nation, if we don't certify something here, especially in the motor vehicle realm or authority, it isn't going to get manufactured anywhere else. Because you're not generally going to build a vehicle that can't be sold in California. It can't be manufactured or sold in California. Because we do have 39 million of the 310 million people in the United States, and we are, for all of the progressiveness of California, we are very progressive in many ways, including public transportation in many ways. We are still the leaders of the motor industry. Now, Detroit may build most of the cars, and St. Louis and a few other places that have plants that exist in the United States. But the trendsetter and the table setter for the vehicle motor industry is California for the United States of America. And we do have tougher emission standards here than anywhere else. In fact, you no longer can manufacture or sell a conventional diesel bus in California. It has to be nearly or totally zero emissions, and they're getting close to where real close to where it will have to be zero emissions. So we pioneered bus rapid transit. We were, I think, the fourth transit agency in California to have a BRT route, but we had more elements of BRT than other places. For example, AC Transit San Jose and LA was the first one to have it. All use fare boxes. You can speed that bus between limited stops, but when it gets there, they still all line up single file and go in the front door and swipe a card or tap a card or put money in the fare box. Slows the route down dramatically. A lot of the time you save by limited stops, you lose with people standing up single file getting on a bus. Our buses board all 2 or 3 doors, intermittent back and forth, and then we do fare inspection after the bus is rolling. It's what they call an honor system of boarding. It's the way light rail trains do it. The reason light rail does that is because they hook trains together or cars together to make a train, and you only have one motorman way up at the front. Well, he can't be checking out fares in the third car. So that's how the honor system got started. Now, I should point out bus rapid transit started approximately 1998 or 9 in Curitiba. I want to say Curitiba, Brazil, I believe it is, and then Bogota, Colombia. And the reason they went with bus rapid transit is they really needed a good light rail subway system. They simply didn't have the money for the capital expense of tearing up the roads, putting in the rails, and the signaling systems and all that goes with rail. So they came up with this incredible network of high-speed, high-frequency, high-capacity buses that worked in a perfect grid system where all these routes were operating like on 90-second frequencies. Yes, I mean a minute and a half between buses.
Wow.
All going in different directions and all meeting at central locations. And they carried prodigious numbers of people. And they did it for maybe 1/5 the cost of putting in a rail system. However, there is, as great as that sounds, and it is wonderful, and Vancouver's going through this right now, by the way, and so I think it's Edmonton and Calgary. That's great, but you also can hit a saturation point with buses.
Yes.
There's only so much roadway and sidewalk out there, or curbs. Then you can only make transit stations so big that hold buses. At some of these places, the ridership and the buses have maxed out, but they're so busy they can't figure out how to close the roads to build a light rail line. So you have to be somewhat careful how you go about that. Now, these places have what's called dedicated guideway, by the way. That's the major element we don't have in Stockton. Our buses are not allowed to have a dedicated use of a single lane of roadway over a period of time, like in peak hours. And because we don't have that, sometimes we can't get funding from the federal, state, or local government that we really should get. However, having said all that, and I'm just building the stage here, so we pioneered bus rapid transit, and we were one of the very first, if not the first, route in the whole nation to become exclusively diesel-electric hybrid bus rapid transit, by the way. And then the ridership on that corridor jumped, as I said, from 1,100 with 4 routes at 90 hours a day to within 3 years, the Route 40 was doing 2,800 trips a day at 70 hours. And then we later moved it from El Dorado and Center, a few blocks over, here to the Miracle Mile. After the route had proven itself, suddenly the Miracle Mile, everybody wanted us to have a route like that. No one had really wanted us here in the beginning. So we moved the route over here, which put it in front of the adult school, gave it the Miracle Mile. And as we all know, one of the amazing things about the Miracle Mile is so many people live within walking distance of it. Well, the ridership jumped from 2,800 to up to 5,400 a day in a year and a half. That's how much the ridership jumped on that route. Now we're talking about 2009, for example. And the whole Route 40, and then we wound up eventually in 2014 and got the articulated buses, because people always ask, do you guys really need those articulated buses, or you just want to look good and feel good? No, we really needed the buses. People were hanging out the windows practically, and the insides of the bus were just crammed full of people, especially during a peak time when, say, Delta College got out, and a wave of people was coming in out of Weberstown or Sherwood Mall. All this could be happening at the same time. When we were on a 15-minute frequency, which we are again right now, I remember this. And we had the 40-foot buses before we had the articulated bus. I'll never forget this. This is about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Bus is going south. So at the Delta College side of Delta College, at that bus stop, bus pulls in. About 20 people get off, and literally, because I count them with a clicker, about 50-something boarded. And by that time, the bus was running almost 10 minutes late because of all the boarding and everything. So another one comes in right behind it. It scoops up another 40 or something like that people, lets off about another 20. It takes off, and it was also delayed somewhat by the bus ahead of it. So, and we don't really want this to happen very often. It almost never happens. But by the time those took off, the third bus was actually running about a minute or two early, came in behind them, and boarded 20 more people. I mean, that's in Stockton now. I saw roughly 100 people get on and about 100 people get off, 3 buses in a space of about 5 minutes at the Delta College stop. And back in 2014, we had 2, and I can't remember exactly which months. I want to say it was the months of October and November of 2014. And we had, no, I think this was 2013 actually. We actually averaged for every single hour of all of the Route 40 buses running every day, on Saturdays, for 4 Saturdays in the 1 month and 4 the next month, for all the buses running simultaneously, each and every bus was averaging over 80 passengers per every hour it was in service, which is essentially a round trip between downtown Stockton and Hammer Lane and back. Now that's how, so that was 2.5 times the capacity of the bus it was picking up in one round trip. Now the first day we ever ran articulated, yeah, it was 2013 I'm talking about. The first day we ever ran articulated buses was a February day in 2014, something like February 12th or 13th or something like that. On, I believe, a Tuesday morning, we had our big ceremonies up at the Hammer Triangle Station with all the dignitaries and the photo ops and the speeches and some cake and some orange juice or something and all that. And then, of course, everybody goes to work. and everybody gets back to normal business. Well, of course, myself and a colleague of mine, and we did it independent of each other, by the way. We hadn't realized either one of us was doing it. Later that morning at about 10:35 in the morning at the downtown transit center, purely at random, not planned, no ceremonies going on, jumped on the first regular revenue round trip of an articulated bus. That's the 60-foot buses that bend in the middle, often called accordion buses, because the middle section looks like an accordion. That nondescript, at random, round trip from downtown to Hammer Lane and back picked up 118 people. Just on a Tuesday morning at 10:30 in the morning. Wow. So that's the kind of ridership we've had on Pacific Avenue. In 2014, fiscal year 2014, that route alone, the 40, carried 1.2 million people.
Whew. That is a lot of people.
So having said that, this is what's now happened. Now we've set the stage here. This is what we're doing now.
Drum roll. Huh.
This is Martin Luther King Boulevard. It either started construction a couple days ago or will be at the end of this week. They will be closing some sections of Martin Luther King around Martin Luther King and San Joaquin and Martin Luther King and Turnpike. Pretty close to where the, what is it, Dollar General store is now? Yeah, I've still got Central Mart stuck in my head, which when I was a little tiny kid, that was a Safeway, by the way. Anyway, we will be putting in new bus rapid transit station stops on Martin Luther King Boulevard for our new Route 49 Martin Luther King Corridor Metro Express route, which we're going to rename those BRT Express routes to use the more common nomenclature around the country. And they're going to have beautifully new painted buses, by the way. They are rebranding the buses a little bit. And they're going to run from Turnpike and French Camp Road on that little triangular stretch there by the Family Dollar General Store, all the way across Martin Luther King Boulevard to a right-hand turn on B Street where the Caltrans District 10 office is, and do a loop around B Street to Mariposa Road where the relatively new Walgreens is, swing up, back up to Mariposa Road, swinging by the Diamond National Plant, and then back over to Edison High School. And if that wasn't enough, y mucho más. We're going to simultaneously do another bus rapid transit route, or near to simultaneous, on the Fremont Minor Corridor, and that's called Route 47. And that's also an east-west route. We'll go all the way from Lincoln and Weber by the DMV and the Children's Museum and the San Joaquin County WorkNet. There's three great places to generate ridership, especially WorkNet and DMV. To downtown, crossing by Weber Point Event Center and the new courthouse, then coming to the Downtown Transit Center, where we have about 7,000 people a day that get on and off buses on a weekday, and then run out to Minor Avenue, and then over to Fremont by Eastland Plaza, and then by the strip mall there on Filbert and Fremont, and then over to Franklin High School. We have pretty good riders, pretty solid ridership every weekday. That route also is coming online. So we're going to have two more bus rapid transit routes starting in late January or close to late January in 2018, which sounds a long ways away, but I can assure you it's not that far away. And if that wasn't enough, and this is why we started the whole story about Southern California, the yucky air and the joke that they were the rapid transit district and how they were using diesel buses and all the fumes and fumigation and all the forest fires of Southern California lumbering their way down crowded freeways. We here in Stockton, on the Route 44, and this is going to, I can't announce a date today, but it's going to happen imminently within about 2 weeks, is the Route 44 is going to start using Proterra electric buses. And the charging stations are being built downtown. They actually just completed construction on Friday of a second charging station to go with the original one we already had. Because what I forgot to mention was we were the second transit agency in California to operate all-electric quick-charge Proterra buses. Proterra buses, by the way, if Betty were here, she'd say this. I think that means for the earth or something like that in Spanish. Proterra, for earth, for land, for the world. They are a technological startup company in Greenville, South Carolina, totally American-made. By the way, the other company that's trying to push electric buses on the American transit industry is called BYD. Their home base is China. They have, to their credit, built at least one or two manufacturing plants in the United States, are employing American workers and contractors, but they are a Chinese company. And by the way, BYD stands for Build Your Own Dreams. Every time I hear that, I just kind of, okay. That's kind of yucky. Kind of like the fact that Budweiser is not owned by Americans anymore, and they put America on the can. Anyway, getting back to so our buses come from Proterra. Now, we said they're quick charge buses. They actually, this is very space age. It looks like something out of the Jetsons for anybody who remembers that cartoon, or Star Trek or whatever. The buses pull into the dock, to our boarding bays, our exclusive, beautiful off-street boarding bays at the downtown transit center. And when the bus gets about 50 feet from its normal boarding area, the driver stops and puts it in park, I believe it is, and a computer takes over the bus and drives it the last 50 feet into the boarding stall.
What?
And as this is happening, a big pod comes down and docks along the roof of the bus in a groove area. I like to say it mates with the bus. And then does a quick charge. You can charge, in about 10 minutes, you can charge that full-size transit bus to drive about 2.5 hours and 30 miles on that charge. And it can do an intermittent charge. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes. It can be a 6.5-minute charge. And it'll get, just do the incremental amount of charging. So we've had those buses run. We've had these kaleidoscopic, multicolored buses running around that say electric in big, large letters on the side that are 35-foot buses, very attractive. We've been running those since June of 2013. We were the second agency in California and the fourth in the nation to operate that service in regular service. We wound up putting those routes on routes 55 and 60. 60 goes to Pixie Woods from downtown by way of Monte Diablo, and the route 55 goes out to Weston Ranch with some of the operating on the highway, by the way, Interstate 5. Those routes are going to remain electric, but within a few weeks, when everything's set and ready to go, the 44 will become electric, the Route 44 Metro Express, and I have more news about that in a moment about that route. And then we will also, just unplugged my headset. I always hit my cord because I get all excited, start flapping my arms around. This is working, right?
Yeah.
So we'll just switch to our backup pair until I knock the headphones off, the cord off of that one. I'm just not used to. I'm going to have to get a wireless headset one of these days because I just can't keep my arms in place. But we will just march right through this technical difficulty as if nothing happened. There we are. We're still Stockton alive. Okay. Fortunately, we have backups to backups here. A very well professionally operated studio, I might add. And Dustin is quite the engineer of the radio show. But anyway, so we'll have the 44 running electric. And then Route 80 also. Now Route 80 goes all the way currently from Section and Oro and southeast Stockton all the way up Farmington and 8th Street on Wilson Way, Minor Avenue downtown, over on Acacia by Dameron Hospital, then all the way up Pershing to Robin Hood and all the way into the mall. That route's going to go electric. And it will charge, these routes will all charge downtown on 2 charging stations. Those first 2 buses I told you about, by the way, those are almost handmade prototypes. And they cost $1.2 million a piece. Now, I should point out the California Energy Commission bought those buses. So the San Joaquin County taxpayers benefited from those buses but did not have to pay for them, at least not directly. And then the articulated buses, the 60-foot buses that bend in the middle, those are also diesel-electric hybrid, by the way. We're one of the very few transit agencies, we're the smallest transit agency in America to operate articulated buses. And now on top of that, ours are diesel-electric hybrid, which makes them even rarer. They're built, by the way, by Nova Corporation and they were manufactured in upstate New York. I forgot the name of the city, but it's real close to the border near Montreal. Or when you cross over and go into Montreal, I can't think of the name of the city that's right near the border. That's where they were manufactured. However, now that Gillig has its new larger plant in Livermore, they may be able to do articulated buses, and they're looking at also producing electric buses. Either extended charge battery buses or the quick charge buses that we're currently using. So, anyway, in addition to all that good news, I should point out the Route 44 was recently, in anticipation of these things happening, and because of important customer need, was also expanded dramatically into an area, and I know you really can't see that too well on camera, but that lower corner, down on the very corner down here. Now, of course, I'm going backwards. Right there, that's all the way to Arch Road and Highway 99, where the formerly huge post office building was. But we're out there because there's a huge PG&E regional office there. There's also the Venture Academy. with 2,400 students, about 800 of whom are high school age, and therefore many will ride the bus, especially because it's located kind of in the middle of nowhere. And then you've got all the adults that work at the school. Then you have the San Joaquin County Office of Education, which has more students and more adults. And you got the PG&E office. And then you've got 4 other major, huge office building or warehouse buildings right in that immediate area. And then we're looking to install a stop on B Street near Industrial, where there's a bunch of other industrial warehouses, including a Trader Joe's warehouse, where we already are getting calls for people wanting to ride this bus. Now, the significance of this bus going out there is it runs every 15 minutes. I'm sorry, every 20 minutes. The Route 44 is every 20 minutes. And it gives that area about 76 trips a day, plus the trips that were already out there, which is about 9. So they're going from 9 to 85 trips a day. Already have this now, I should say, plus 7-day-a-week service with 30-minute service all day long on weekends. So we've expanded the route first and improved it dramatically, and now we're going to electrify it. And then on top of that, that's Route 44, which has existed since January of 2011, by the way, when it did actually go to the airport at that time. And it may still return to the airport at one point. If Allegiant Airlines gets their Mexican flights and they get their customs office at the Stockton Airport, which then will become the Stockton Metropolitan Airport, then would become the Stockton International Airport, we will probably run that or some other buses out to the airport. When we ran out there before, we did get some ridership, but it wasn't really that consistent. And the Venture Academy hadn't really established itself at that time, but now all these things have happened. So we've improved the route first, and then we're going to electrify it. And then when it gets electrified, it's going to work in integrated electrification harmony with 3 other bus routes that will be electrified. And then between about late January of 2018 and about April to June of 2018, we're bringing more electric buses into service and on more routes. Now, we're also, as part of all this expansion, we are actually going to be soon constructing another charging station out around the area of Union Street and 2nd Street out by the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds and the Rancho San Miguel, and right next to the Union Pacific Railroad Yard that was once Western Pacific and used to be the area where the ACE trains were stored before ACE got their own beautiful maintenance facility. So having described all that, let's give you a real brief behind-the-scenes look at how some of these things get designed. First of all, you see fancy marketing materials out there. Well, let me show you how these things often look in the beginning. First of all, they're often hand-drawn on a piece of paper or kind of a road map. But for example, and we just completed this today, you guys are the first ones that ever, this is another exclusive for KXVS, the Voice of Stockton, and Stockton Alive. There's our new BRT network that will be in place when we have the 5 routes. However, this is the map we're using today. But in order to give people a peek of the future, we took this map and simply hand drew the new routes on there and then told our, there we go, and then told our graphic arts and design and marketing people to come up with something that would really be descriptive and show people what's going on. And we got this map right here. If we can enlarge this one, there we go. Whoops, let's see. It would help if I right side up. The Earth's rotation was in winter for a moment there. We were in South America. Anyway, you have the Hammer Lane route at the top, number 43, coming straight up and down. It's not quite totally straight, but it is for the sake of this map. Route 40, Pacific Avenue, which we talked about. Then the squiggly one on the bottom is the Route 44 Airport Way corridor. And then the yellow ones are the new corridors, east and west, that will be the Route 47 and 49. There we go. The yellow ones are east-west routes, cross-town routes. You notice by the time we have all 5 routes, we'll be covering a lot of Stockton with our BRT routes, much as the city used to be covered in its core areas by streetcar systems. We're going to be doing for Stockton with bus rapid transit what streetcars once used to do, although we're doing it on a much bigger scale. The streetcar system, known as Stockton Electric Railway, which later was known as City Lines, and for a while had as competitor the Central California Traction Company. The extent of the streetcar system was from McKinley Park in the south end, which was then the beautiful Stockton Municipal Baths with their artesian springs and all kinds of beautiful infrastructure and bathhouses. But it used to go, that's as far south as it went. As far west as it went was Victory Park at Pershing Avenue. As far north as it went was University of the Pacific and Oak Park, and as far east as it went was what would now be known as Wilson Way. That was the entire Stockton electric streetcar system, and pretty much the City Lines bus system that replaced it. I should point out that the Stockton City Lines bus system was, yes, the General Motors conspiracy. They had the National Cities Lines, was the General Motors holding company that bought up all the streetcar systems and converted them to buses nationwide. Well, they had a West Coast subsidiary known as Pacific City Lines, and that was the one company that bought up the Stockton Electric Railway, and then within 2 years converted it to diesel buses. And so it was Stockton City Lines until June 1st, 1965 is when RTD began operations, then known as SMTD, the Stockton Metropolitan Transit District. Now, how do we manage to run all these electric buses through a charger? Well, we do a chronological time, sequential time chart of all the arrivals and departures at our downtown transit center. You're seeing a small part of it here. And then we have to actually coordinate all the times of when the buses come and go so that 3 routes, for example, can use one charging station when they're alternately at the stop at the same spot in the downtown transit center at different times of the hour. So that goes in, a lot of that goes into it. And then if you've ever wanted to know what a route looks like in its earliest beginning days, well, there's a draft of what a new route looks like. Believe it or not, it's handwritten in pencil on all these sequential lines. And the reason is, now not everybody does this, but we do it here. And the reason we do it here is we actually think about every single trip and what time it needs to be downtown, what time it needs to be on, say, the Hammer Triangle or Delta College. And that, you know, everyone knows this. Computers can do all kinds of great things, but you got to put parameters into them. Well, who puts the parameters in but the people? So we just write the routes out by hand, and then we put them into a computer, and then we let the computer check our work, and then we go back and and we actually, believe it or not, we have one computer that actually takes a schedule after you put all the input of the whole schedule in there. And remember, a schedule could be multiple buses. A Route 40, for example, is running with 4 buses simultaneously. And when it was on a 10-minute frequency, it was running with 5 buses simultaneously. Believe it or not, the computer, there's one computer program, it actually drives a little icon of a little bus back and forth to make sure these trips are all scheduled properly. And that's called I forgot, they have a term for that. So that's what, now, that schedule you just saw, got to stay on my microphone here, that hand-drawn schedule eventually turns into something that is a real timetable. See, there's a real timetable, and there's all your trips. Actually, to me, it doesn't look that much different than the handwritten, except, of course, it's in beautiful type print now. And they're not all straight up and down like that. A Route 40 has so many trips that they use a kind of a timetable shortcut. You see that box there? That box takes the same time of the minutes on the same time of each hour and just, okay, now from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., all the buses hit these same stops at the same number of minutes after the hour. And that's what's in the box there. We do that on the weekday schedule. In fact, on the 40, we even do it on the weekend schedule. The 40 recently was running every 20 minutes on weekends, and it was doing great at that for a long time. But unfortunately, due to some negative trends in ridership, we did reduce these services a little bit. So we could save those hours and put them into other routes to improve other routes and make them stronger. Transit is going through a tough time right now, thanks to a multitude of social trends. Our ridership, after 4 great years of growing ridership, we've had 3 years of having it drop off somewhat. Hence, a huge route restructuring that we're doing, because as we put in these new bus rapid transit routes, we have to restructure all the routes around them. I mentioned earlier how we try to get the routes alternated to make sure they can all charge at the electric station at the same time. There was a chart where we put a bunch of times down. That's the Route 80. And we actually circled times where there would be conflicts, therefore telling us we had to rebuild the schedule. If the close-up will come up, yeah, you'll see there's times circled there in the middle columns. That's the times the bus was arriving and departing and laying over at the downtown transit center. I know we're just knocking people over dead with the excitement of everything we're talking about. Now, we don't always draw everything by hand. We do use Google Earth to come up with prototypes of routes. You can't see it too well, and there's a light green line where some proposed route service would be. I'm not going to keep it there because you really can't see it. Now, we also recognize that some people are challenged with reading timetables like I just showed you, like this timetable here, for example. That can look a little intimidating to people. So, for some certain places, we actually do what's called a quick reference schedule, and we'll do this for anybody requested, any business or location. And we actually put the trips down, something like an airline schedule. Well, this bus route leaves at this time from this stop going to this location, or it arrives at a certain time. And this happens to be one for the Venture Academy, which is out there, as I mentioned. And this is a prototype. I mean, this is one where we're still editing it. We were writing up a big box at the top there. I wished I don't have the finished version, so I'm sorry I forgot to bring the finished version, show you how it came out. We have a beautiful border around it now. Of course, all the red ink is gone. And it shows that this service now operates every 20 minutes all day to these people. We're already starting to see some new riders out there. So while RTD has suffered some ridership losses over the last couple of years, we're not just sitting still and we're not just licking our wounds. We are jumping up and doing something about it. Hence, better buses. Now, these buses are specially funded, by the way. I don't want you to think we just throw taxpayers' money away on shiny new buses that we don't need. We're replacing buses that are at retirement age, which is 12, 13, 14 years old. Some of them have a million something plus miles on them. We're getting beautiful new high-tech buses through special funding that we aggressively go out and get, and through special technology. And we then replace buses that are already at retirement age. So that's very important people understand that. We also do as much outreach as possible. Here's all the Stockton back-to-school nights for our major high schools in this area. We're going to be attending there just tomorrow. And I realize this is August 14th when I say this. Tuesday, August 15th, we're going to start this aggressive outreach area where we're going to go to quite a few places like the Delta College stop, the Lincoln Weber WorkNet stop where DMV is. We're going to go to Eastern Plaza, and we're going to take this survey out with us right here and let people comment on our service with some very carefully selected questions. By carefully, I mean written to allow for a good answer. By good answer, I mean one that actually talks about the usefulness of our service. And then they'll have a chance to answer a specific question about the new routes, and then open comments on the bottom. We're hoping, this is the first batch right here, we're hoping to get somewhere between 300 to 500 of these comments. And in addition to that, we're going to go to back to school nights. We're going to go to special community organizations. We're going to be out there meeting with people, Lions Club, Rotary Club, Better Business Districts, all that kind of stuff. And so that's. I hope this answered your question.
It's been a lot of stuff's happening with RTD.
Yes.
I've seen recently a lot of stuff going on around town.
And then we have the Uber service too.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about that.
That's right. We'll remind me. We'll go into that in the next show.
Okay.
It's, by the way, it's a runaway smash hit.
Yeah.
It's already 4 times the ridership they expected.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Stockton Alive with your host, Nate Knott. Thanks for tuning in to KXVS, the voice of Stockton.
And run quickly because the BRT bus is leaving the station. Quietly.